Hello, welcome to the Lone Show. I'm your host, John Malone. In this episode, no regulars, because reasons as always. As for our guest, he's from Victorville, California. He's a keynote speaker, author. He has, oh my gosh, there's so much to go through. Let's get into that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Michael Hinkson.
Hi, how are you?
Going great.
There you are.
So, how's life?
Life is good. It is let's see, right now only 94 degrees Fahrenheit where I am, so it's actually the coolest it's been in a while. So we are coping.
Yeah, yeah, actually, for me, it's the opposite. It's actually been a lot hotter than most recently.
Ah, well, now where are you?
Manchester in England.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, it's warming up there, huh?
It
Well, there you
sure
go.
is. Is there
Well,
anything you're current?
the
Go
weather's
on.
crazy. The weather's crazy.
Yes, weather is crazy at times. Is there anything you're working on or up to recently?
Well, I do three main things that keep me busy during the day. One, I work with a company called accessiBe that makes products that help make the internet more inclusive and accessible for people with a variety of disabilities. I also host a podcast called Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And the idea behind the podcast is to show people that they can be and probably are more unstoppable than they think they are by bringing just anyone who wants to come on and tell their own life stories, give them the opportunity to do that. And the reality is, I think everyone has a story to tell. So we get to talk about that. So I do the podcast. And a lot of what I do is I'm a keynote public speaker, and I've been a speaker ever since surviving the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. And so I've been actually working on finding speaking engagements now that the pandemic has gone. And also for me, an additional year of mostly being home had to happen because my wife became ill in 2022 and she passed away at the end of 2022. So now I can begin to travel again and look for speaking engagements. So we're ramping that up as well. And so between the three of them, it keeps me busy and out of trouble.
Fantastic. So, what's the inspiration behind accessiBe?
In 2015, three people in Israel started a company. They're three bright guys, 25 years old at the time, and they decided they wanted to make internet websites for people. Well, in 2017, Israel came along and said websites all have to be accessible in Israel. And they had a lot of customers, and we're trying to figure out how to do it and how to make their customers' websites usable for everyone and do it efficiently. Well, they decided to use artificial intelligence and their wits, and they created a product that they called accessiBe. Now it's called an access widget because the company was also called accessiBe, accessiBe, and it's capital B. And so accessiBe makes this in part access widget that sits in the cloud, and if somebody subscribes to it, then the system will look at their website and it will do what it can to make the website more inclusive. And what that means is that there are standards, there are guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines created by the World Wide Web Consortium that say this is what needs to be done to make an internet website accessible. This is the coding that has to be done. You have to label links. You have to make sure that menus are usable and so on. And it's not just for blind people, although we face a lot of the problems because typically people don't pay attention to us. So I can go to any number of websites, and as I'm looking down the page, I'll hear link, 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 and they're not labeled. And I don't even know that I've also passed menus because they're not set up properly. So accessiBe's widget will do a lot to help make those parts of a website, those elements, usable and accessible. Now, it's not a perfect solution yet. AI's got a ways to go. And there are things that it's going to be a while before it really does well. For example, identifying and properly naming pictures. So when I discovered accessiBe and put it on my website, there was a picture that comes up on my website And when accessiBe tries to describe it, it says man and dog sitting on bench with his eyes closed. Well, whose eyes, me or the dog? But the problem is that's not what I want it to say anyway. What I want it to say is Michael Hinkson and Roselle sitting on park bench, and it could say, and Mike's eyes are closed. But the point is that AI won't do that yet. It's getting better, but it doesn't do that. So there are still things that a website coder has to do. But the beauty of accessiBe is that it's very scalable. So let's say somebody puts accessiBe on their site and something doesn't work right. If they report it to accessiBe and accessiBe's staff goes and looks at it and says, oh, you're right, something isn't working quite right. Let's take, for example, a shopping cart, and it's not working right. If accessiBe fixes it for that customer, because basically the product in its simplest form is a widget that sits up in the cloud, and you fix it for one customer, you fix it for all. It's a scalable product. Unlike what happens with programmers who do websites, they have to do them one website at a time. So my belief is that accessiBe is something that every single programmer ought to have in their toolbox and put on their websites. And accessiBe will make accessible and usable what it can, which leaves only the other things, whatever they happen to be, that the website the website coder has to do. So a lot of it becomes a lot more scalable and a lot better all the way around. Anyway, these three guys did it. They started a company called accessiBe, and they've been doing that ever since. Now there are over 250,000 customers worldwide using accessiBe.
Wow, impressive. And in which nations is accessiBe available at the moment?
It's available in the U.S. It's available, of course, in Israel. I think there are a number of places around Europe that are using it. They're working on building a larger presence. It's available in Canada. So it's growing in a variety of ways. accessiBe has offices in Israel and in New York. So they're working to make the product more usable. And they've created some other products, for example, something called AccessFlow. What AccessFlow is something that if you run it on your site, and there's a cost for it, but if you run it on your site, it will actually look at your website and it will say, so the widget couldn't make this accessible. It couldn't make that accessible. Here's how you fix that, even to the point of telling you what kind of code or what code you have to put in. So AccessFlow will actually help a coder do the rest of the things that the widget itself doesn't do, which is really pretty cool. Now, there are some things that accessiBe is never going to fix because they're not really problems of access. It's badly written code. You can't really ever deal with badly written software. Somebody's going to have to go back and fix that. That is the people who created it. But accessiBe does a great job of making a lot of things accessible. On my website, when we recently upgraded it, well, recently now it's been 4 years, when we upgraded and redid my website, the guy who did it said that he knew all about access. He didn't. And he did some things, for example, not creating a menu properly. So when I go down the page, I hear something that says Michael Hinkson bio pop-up. Now, it says pop-up because there's this little arrow at the bottom of the menu. You would see it as a sighted person, but I hear pop-up. If I click on the link, it just goes into my bio, but it doesn't open the menu. But if I activate accessiBe, then it says Michael Hinkson bio menu. And if I hit enter, the whole menu opens up as it should. So again, there are a lot of things that accessiBe does do well to make websites more usable and available and accessible and inclusive for all. But it's got a ways to go in terms of the widget. But as a company, accessiBe is committed to making websites accessible and has created the other technologies like what I mentioned with AccessFlow to help make that happen.
Wow, impressive.
Oh, it's cool.
It sure is. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I really have had the opportunity to travel to a variety of countries, and I like everywhere I've been. I do have to say overall, I think given what I do and given all that I faced, I think I would still like to live in the United States, but at the same time, I've been to New Zealand. I love it. I had a lot of fun there. Was there for 3 weeks. I've been to Canada. I've been to Japan. I've been to Korea, Israel, the Netherlands, a number of countries, and I've enjoyed them all. But I really like the U.S. I like the wide variety of people. Um, I guess I should also say the wide variety of different kinds of foods depending on where you are. But I really enjoy everywhere I've been. So I can't really complain a whole lot about any of it.
Fair enough. If someone wrote a book about you, what do you think its title would be?
If someone else wrote a book about me as opposed to the books that I've written, um, I would hope that it would be entitled something like He Lived Life to the Fullest or Life is an Adventure. Join Mike on his travels. Something like that. I really do believe life is an adventure. I believe that we should live life to the fullest. I also, having escaped the World Trade Center, have adopted a philosophy that says don't worry about the things that you can't control, focus on what you can, and the rest will take care of itself. And that and part of the story behind that is in my New York Times bestselling book Thunderdog, the story of a blind man, his guide dog, and the triumph of trust, that was written and published in 2011. The other aspect of all of that is that I escaped because I didn't allow fear to overwhelm me, or as I put it, blind me. I was able to make decisions because I learned what to do in case of an emergency at the World Trade Center. I didn't rely on signs and couldn't anyway. So I learned what to do. And I think that people who have eyesight really make a serious mistake by not truly learning what to do in emergencies, but figure, I'll just read the signs. Yeah, that works until it doesn't, when the lights go out and the power goes out, or the building is full of smoke or whatever. So knowledge is a whole lot better thing to have. And I realized at the beginning of the pandemic that although I talked about traveling out of the World Trade Center in 2001, I'd not really taught other people how to control fear. So we're actually releasing a week from tomorrow, that is on August 20th. I don't know when this will actually air, but on August 20th, we're releasing a new book called Live Like a Guide Dog, True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. And the idea behind that book is I use lessons I've learned from my 8 guide dogs and my wife's service dog, Fantasia, who was actually the mother of my 7th guide dog. The lessons that I've learned from all of them about living life and how to live without fear, or how to live in a more productive way. For example, the problem with people is we're always doing what if about everything in the world. What if this happens? What if that happens? We build up fear. We create so much fear, and the reality is most all of those fears will never come to pass. But we spend so much time worrying about them and building these fears in our heads that we go crazy, rather than just worrying about the things that we have control over and not worrying about the rest of it. Dogs don't do what if. My guide dog at the World Trade Center, Roselle, when we got home, immediately started playing with my retired guide dog, Linny. And that was because nothing during the day threatened Roselle directly. So when she got home, it was over for her. And there's a lesson to be learned there about how we all can do better if we stop worrying about every little old thing that comes along.
That is so true. What was life for you growing up?
When I was born 2 months premature and put in an incubator, so my retinas didn't grow properly and I became blind basically right from the beginning. At the same time, the doctors told my parents that I should be sent to a home because no blind child could ever grow up to amount to anything. And my parents disagreed with that, so they brought me up with an attitude that I could do whatever I decided to do with my life. And I worked at it. I didn't have then the technology that I have today, so we didn't have Google Maps, we didn't have GPS, we didn't have talking cell phones, or any cell phones when I was growing up, for that matter. But over time, technology helped a lot. But no matter what happens with technology, it still gets back to mental attitude and belief and life and philosophy. So I was still able to function. I left college, well, I graduated with a master's degree in physics from the University of California at Irvine. I went to work. I was very fortunate that I was able to get some jobs. At one point when I couldn't because I had been laid off by a company who was purchased by Xerox, and Xerox didn't want the people, they just wanted the technology. And so the result was I started looking for a job and I couldn't find one. And at the time, the unemployment rate among employable blind people was somewhere around 70%. And it hasn't dropped that much in the last 40 years since that happened. So I started my own company selling computer-aided design systems, CAD systems to architects and engineers, PC-based CAD systems. And that was actually where I originally learned the concept that I mentioned earlier about how programmers ought to have accessiBe in their toolboxes. Because when I started selling PC-based CAD systems, architects came and looked at it and they said, yeah, this is really great, but if we buy your system, then what's going to happen is that people are going to not want to pay us as much because we will be getting their jobs done in like a fraction of the time that we did when we're drawing and charging by the time. And I said, no, you're looking at it all wrong. So imagine the scenario. You get a customer, and they tell you what they want. You draw the building and the complex or whatever in a week instead of months. You bring them in. You take them on a three-dimensional solid model walkthrough and fly-through of the building, which we could do on a PC at the time. And you show them everything, including looking out the window so they can see what it actually looks like when you look out a window. And then they can say, well, I like this, but I don't like that. I want this change and that change. And you go off and make those changes. And maybe within 3 weeks or a month, you give them what they want. But you don't charge by the time. You charge by your expertise. So you don't charge anything less than you otherwise would have charged. You're charging for the expertise and the convenience, and that also gives you more time to go off and find more customers. And that's really the issue, is that CAD wasn't a threat to any architect. What it really did was make them more efficient so that they could go out and get more jobs. accessiBe does the same thing with the internet. Only about 3% of all internet websites are really accessible today and have had the accessibility features built into them by programmers, or now with the help of accessiBe. So we've got 97% that aren't. And the reality is that individual programmers aren't going to fix that, not without help. And that's what something like accessiBe brings.
Okay then, yes, I can see why accessiBe is so advantageous for a lot of people with physical limitations.
Well, let's say you're not, physical limitations and other kinds of things. So say you're a person with epilepsy. You go to a website and the website has blinking elements. That could cause you to have a seizure. And so the result is that you, with accessiBe, have the ability to stop that blinking. There are profiles within accessiBe to deal with attention deficit disorder and ADHD and other things. So there are a lot of different kinds of things dealing with physical types of issues, neurodivergent, which is somewhat physical, I guess. But the reality is you have a physical disability too. You don't recognize it, but you do. In 1878, Thomas Edison invented the electric light bulb to give you the ability to be able to function in the dark, which is really just a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act and all the legal things that go on around the world. But make no mistake, you still have the disability. If you lose power, what do? You start running to try to find a smartphone or a flashlight so you can turn it on to keep light so that you can do whatever it is you were doing or at least get out of the building. So your disability is covered up by light on demand, but make no mistake, the disability is still there. We've got to get society to start to recognize that disability doesn't mean a lack of ability. People say to me all the time, well, of course, disability means a lack of ability. It starts with dis. And my point is, so does discrete, so does decipher, so does discern, and so many other things. No, disability doesn't mean a lack of ability. Disability is a characteristic that we all have, and it manifests itself differently for different people depending on your circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. What is your hidden talent?
Oh, I don't know, because they're all out in the open now. I would say, for me, the fact that I have been in science and love science my whole life. I do karaoke singing too. I'm an amateur radio operator and love to play with that. I love to read. And I can read, and now with technology, I can read at pretty fast speeds. So when I'm on an airplane using earphones, I can be reading in like 300 or 400 words a minute because I can have the machine speak that fast and still understand what it is saying because the pitch doesn't change. So it's just a very fast talker. So I would say being able to listen at a pretty fast speed is something that most people wouldn't know about me.
Okay, yes, fair enough. If you could travel back in time, what decade would you want to live in?
If I could go back in time, and I guess I'm a little prejudiced, probably the 1940s. I love big band music. I love swing music. I would have loved to have gotten to meet Benny Goodman, for example. And actually, he did a very famous concert at Carnegie Hall in 1938 and was going to do one in 1978, except he died in 1976. And I was going to try to go to that concert, but he died, so we didn't get to do it. But I love big band music, and I think that there's a lot of a lot of things that I and other people with good positive attitudes might have been able to do to even make history better than it was. So I'd love to go back to the 40s. But I also like where I live now because the technology is so much better. And we are slowly making inroads at getting people to realize that blindness isn't the problem. It's societal attitudes that are the real challenges that we face. And that would have been harder in the 90s.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Society has progressed over the years,
It
and
has some.
maybe in the maybe next few years there could be so much more that we can't even imagine because it hasn't happened yet.
Well, look at what we've already seen happen with AI in the last 3 years. And I think that that's been a very positive thing. I think AI is a good thing. A lot of people complain about AI. Kids can cheat and write their papers using AI. And my response is that if teachers think about it in the right way, AI is a very positive thing. So if you're really concerned about your students using AI to write their papers, Chat GPT and so on, what you do is you let the students turn their papers in and then you call them each up to the front of the class and say, you have 1 minute to defend your paper, go. And see how well they really do. I suggest that because when I was growing up, I, like any other kid, had to take spelling tests learning how to spell words. Except for me, writing down the words when the teacher dictated them didn't work because the teacher didn't know Braille. And so what I would do, and what I was drafted to do, was to be the person after all the spelling words were given and people wrote them down on their papers, and typically they exchanged papers, so somebody else graded each paper. I had to spell the words out loud. So I'm used to doing that. Maybe that was how I first got involved in being a public speaker and have been doing it in one way or another ever since. But the bottom line is that I think getting students to really defend their papers is a great thing. See how well they really do at it.
Yeah, that is a good point. If you could see one movie again for the first time, what movie would that be?
Oh, I think one of my favorite movies is a science fiction movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still. I really liked that movie. But there are several that I like. Mary Poppins is another one that I liked a lot. And I'm a Mel Brooks fan, so Young Frankenstein. So there are three. Um, just yesterday, I watched a little bit again. I didn't finish it, but I will, of the Disney movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with, the Jules Verne thing with James Mason as Captain Nemo, which I enjoy that movie as well. I like a lot of movies.
That's great. If you had a song for every time you entered the room, what song would that be?
Oh, probably something like Barry Manilow's "Where Did the Time Go?" It's on his album "Singing with the Big Bands." It's the last song on the album. Time just always seems to slip away.
Yeah, I could see that. If you could get an exotic pet, what kind of companion would it be?
An exotic pet. So that would leave out my Labrador, my black lab, and my cat. Although they think they're pretty exotic. I have had desert tortoises in my life. Um, I really, having not seen a lot of animals, I still would like to find a friendly tiger. I think that would be kind of fun. And I'm sure there are some that would not try to eat me if I'm nice to them.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of music do you often listen to?
Well, as I said, I like big band music. I like soft rock. I like some classical. I'm like a lot of different kinds of music. I've never been a heavy metal or hip hop fan necessarily, or rap. Just they haven't clicked with me. But if there's going to be one, it's big band. I also, as a hobby, collect old radio shows, and so again, a lot of that ends up going in the way of music and so on as well.
Sweet. Where was the furthest you traveled to from where you're originally from?
Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, but we moved out to California when I was 5. But I would have to say probably New Zealand from California. I have also been to Japan, but I think New Zealand is a little bit further. So probably New Zealand.
Nice. I would like to go to New Zealand someday.
It's fun. I was there for 3 weeks and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Sweet. What's the best way to start the morning?
Besides opening your eyes and waking up, for me, petting a dog and a cat, and saying hello to them. And they're all there when I wake up in the morning. The cat may well have woken me up, but I think that you can't do much better than getting a chance to pet a dog and a cat and saying hello to them, since they're the only ones that are here now. It used to be saying good morning to my wife Karen, and thoroughly enjoyed that, and enjoyed waking up next to her. So now the cat sleeps on the bed, the dog sleeps on the floor. I'm a meanie. I won't let the dog be on the bed because it's a guide dog, and I don't want him to get in the habit of jumping up on other people's beds and so on. So he doesn't get to do that. But saying hello to them and petting them a little bit in the morning to start the day is always great, and just thanking God for another great day. And no matter what happens, the days are great. And if there are challenges, you work through them.
Indeed. Would you sleep on the wall or sleep on the ceiling?
Oh, neither one really has any great effect for me because I'm going to see the same things either way. I'm going to see the same thing as if I'm sleeping on the bed. So probably, if I could do it, probably I'd sleep on the wall just to be different.
Good for you.
But I'm going to see the same thing no matter where I sleep from, so it's okay.
Nice, nice. Have you met anyone famous?
Well, I have. Peter Falk, who used to be who did Columbo. Larry King from Larry King Live interviewed me 5 times on his show. I was on the Regis and Kelly show with Regis Philbin and Kelly Ripa back in 2001. I have had the honor of meeting a number of famous people. I met George W. Bush and spent 15 minutes having a conversation with him in the White House. So I've met some people who are well known by the public, and I've met me too, and I guess I count a little bit too, so that works.
Cool. And that is all we have for this episode. It's great having you on, Michael, talking about work as a keynote speaker, accessiBe, your journey, and everything else. It's been great.
Well, thank you. If people want to learn more about me as a speaker, they're welcome to go to www.michaelhingson.com. That's MichaelHingson.com. And they can reach out to me. I'm always looking for speaking opportunities. I do get to be in London at the end of October speaking at a Business Continuity International World Hybrid event. So that'll be kind of fun. That'll be my first time to England. Having been to New Zealand, I also have been to Ireland, which is fun, but I've never been to England, so I'm looking forward to that. But if people want a speaker, then hopefully they'll go there or go to michaelhingson.com. They can also go to michaelhingson.com/podcast and learn about the podcast. And if they want to be a guest, they're welcome.
Fantastic. And until next time, stay tuned for more.